It was a slippery one in Sydney. The Lions get the win over the Waratahs, but it was far from fluid. Hello, amateurs. Welcome back to the channel. And I've got Taff with me again today to dig into the details. Taff, how you doing?
I'm good, Timmy. Today we're going to talk about go forward and why it's important to go forward, whether you're a front row,
Primary
whether
theme.
you're a back row, whether you're a back or whatever. Today's going to be about go forward.
100%. Okay, but before we get into the actual game, let's talk about the pre-game. So the big news pre-game was Henry Pollock was rested. He's got a slight calf strain by all accounts. Nothing serious, but they didn't want to risk him. But the question I want to put to you is they brought Scott Cummings in and then moved Byrne to 6. With all the 7s that they've got on this tour, why do you think they didn't replace like for like?
I think it gave them a chance to look at Byrne at 6. I think it gave them a chance to kind of give him a a run out there. And I think also they probably thought at this point it's good for Cummings to have another run out, give them line out options as well. So I think in that sense, it was probably quite a useful thing. They learned a few more things from this than they would have done the other way. So I think that probably an opportunity for them to take a few learnings on. And you got to say Cummings played very well, I thought. He put himself about a lot. His line out was excellent. And actually, I think they probably learned a little bit about Byrne as well as a skipper at 6. We can come on to it whether he really delivered or not. But again, I think for them to think about different combinations and how to perhaps even finish games rather than start games, I thought it was probably good learning for them in terms of those two players.
Yeah, I agree. And I want to pick up the line-out calling that you mentioned then, because the calling of the line-out is one of the most critical parts. And it's very difficult to compare game to game as amateurs as we are. Obviously, the professionals will be doing that. But it's a criticism that I sometimes have of Itoji, that he calls the ball into very congested spaces, which makes it difficult for the hooker. I thought the line-out today looked superb. And I think
Yeah,
a big part of that was due to the calling.
yeah, it didn't. It felt they when they did close ups on the kind of the forward the pack when they were chatting. Cummings obviously had he had a voice in there. You could hear him talk, see him talking, and no, I thought the line out was excellent. I thought they got generally. I thought every call was right, in terms of what to do, both in terms of doing a few funny ones, in terms of being able to how to start attacks, when to catch and drive and stuff. So I thought generally very, very positive that side of things.
Yeah, and one of the reasons I brought this up, because obviously the hooker was Luke Cowan-Dickey, who is often criticised for his throwing. But I think if you put a really good picture in front of him, then his arrows are as good as anybody's, basically.
Yeah, no, I thought so, and I thought, as he said, the movement was good. And a couple of times I noticed Cummings he took a lot of responsibility just to say, yep, you saw it. Sometimes it's just, yeah, we're on, let's go. It's a straight up of 4, let's get the ball moving, get the ball in quickly. And that kind of confidence, I think, then helps the hooker know, the calls are being made with confidence, which means you can throw with confidence as well.
Absolutely. Okay, let's get into the game itself. And you've prefaced this perfectly because it's exactly what I want to talk about. Last time we spoke earlier, or last week, we were speaking about the game plan. How is it suited to test match rugby? And in some respects, because of the weather conditions, apparently the ball was quite greasy out there tonight. It was more aligned with playing a different style of game, shall we say, compared to how the Lions have been playing. So talk me through what you saw in that first half in particular, I think, and why you said go forward, go forward, go forward.
Well, I think we talked about it last time, and I was again very impressed with the confidence of the backs, the confidence of the team to want to play a certain pattern. I thought that was great. I just felt that there were times when they needed to get the ball in front of themselves a bit more, to have a target to ruck, to have a target to hit. I felt like at times they could have taken one or two, as we would talk about, just pick and drives, just start to suck in some of that Waratahs defense. Because the outside backs, I thought the Waratahs defense was brilliant in terms of their energy, appetite to get up, get into the face of the Lions. Of course, you saw the Jones try coming from that slightly aggressive, rush defense. Brilliant pass by it was the 12 and 2 below 2, but put him in. And but that type of aggressive at the line running and go forwardness could, I think, have been done a little bit more, or been a bit more focused around that front 5 and the back row in the first, second, third phases, rather than trying to just sort of do it off a ball that's moved out into the 15 channel, or which I saw a lot, which is kind of behind, and then suddenly everything's going that way, and then that defense, I thought the Waratahs defense did very well, just put a lot of pressure on them. And then you saw the passes perhaps just being overrun or being dropped, or the handling of stuff. And I thought they put extra pressure on themselves then, whereas I think a little bit of, let's take up a few close to the ruck. Let's start to put some pressure back on their inside shoulders a little bit. Could have helped the backs and could have helped Finn Smith be able to feel like we don't have to go, like we talked about last time. He could have just watched the game happen a little bit before saying, I want to dictate everything off first or even second phase.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything you said. My question is, are they being told to do that come what may? Because they want to get these reps in terms of like the little intricacies that they're trying to build and build the running lines, and they're trying to practice that in gameplay, even though it might not be appropriate in this position, because they're still probably going to win the game. Yeah. I wonder if that's the messaging. I wonder if they're being told to persist with that, because those are intelligent players out there. Like, I feel like they would have known that themselves. They haven't got to where they are by being stupid or just being, following rote. So I do wonder if there is an element of let's get the reps in game time, and then, we can build from that.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that's probably true. I suppose my question would be, what happens if it's slippy on the night in that first test? I'm not sure, will they play with the roof closed? I'm not sure at the stadium. But let's say it's not. Let's say, they're going to need for 10 minutes, they're going to just need to, there's been an injury in the two of the backs are injured in the first 10 minutes. And everyone's a bit like, are they able to go, we are going to do a couple of things. We're going to do some hard yards for 5-10 minutes here and have the confidence about doing that. And that's, I think, where I would be more concerned about their ability to bring things just a little tighter to the ruck, a little more aggressive in the running. But having said that, again, a lot of the angled running from the forwards off Mitchell, I thought was very positive at times. There were a couple of times in that second half where people got isolated, like Genge got isolated once and things like that. And that was a clear, like, where was the rest of his teammates as much as anything. But I do think the speed over the ruck, and I noticed it a couple of times. You saw the Waratahs 7 had a lot of turnovers. That would come from body angles and a little bit of aggressive speed over the body, over the ruck, that, a classic New Zealand team would just clean you out. And sometimes it's a little bit like Mitchell's digging it out, and then the ball goes again. And those extra seconds here and there, I think, can cost you a huge amount of momentum at test level. And that's where I would be a little more concerned about, can we take some harder lines and can we clean out with a little bit more aggression?
Completely agree. The breakdown was a mess, I would say. Like, the amount of clean ball that Mitchell got, particularly in the first half, was minimal. He was digging for almost everything. There was another example as well of sending runners in on their own, and I think it was Schumann, and this was like 5 meters from the Waratahs line. So it's a time where you don't have to rush.
Yeah.
It's a time they're under pressure. They're the ones that need to be panicking, not you. And I felt the Lions weren't as composed in those situations, particularly today. And that leads on to the breakdown stuff, because Schumann was sort of wrestling and trying to do his best, and the support player wasn't there, but got there half a second too late. And then suddenly it's a mess again. And I saw that a lot, particularly in the first half today.
Yeah, I think that was that attack just before half time where, they should have really gone in with an extra squad. They got a bit lucky because of the blocking line-out call on the Waratahs try, which was, a little bit unfortunate. But then they didn't capitalize on it themselves. And again, yes, you're absolutely right. That there was a couple of forward charges there, and Schumann being the one that you're referencing, where it felt like they didn't quite have whether it be confidence or whether they didn't have quite the playbook in their heads that you needed at that moment. And I thought, second half, there was a number of penalties on turnovers where they went and they didn't have, again, the body angles and the aggressiveness over the top of the ball to clean it out quickly enough. And that, again, I think against Australia will cost them. So in that sense, I think Farrell will take a huge amount of learnings from tonight, probably more than a 50-point win, in as much as you go, right, we've got to work very hard on our body angles in contact. We've got to work very hard on, our speed of recycle, as well as, plenty of other stuff. And also, probably thinking a little bit about how tough, how can we soften up the inside shoulders a bit, especially on an Aussie defence that will want to drift and be very strong over the ball.
Yeah, completely. And Richard Wigglesworth did say at half time, he said, what message have you given to the players? What do you want from them? And he said, we want the ball in front of us more and we want to tidy up the breakdown. And I think
Mm.
we saw that more so, certainly in the first 20 minutes of the second
Yeah,
half. And
yeah,
then you get Mitchell running. Then you get Mitchell finding holes. And it was probably those 20 minutes that earned him the Man of the Match award because he made a couple of brilliant breaks and scored the try himself as well.
yeah. And suddenly there was that not 5 yards, but maybe 2 yards of space just either side of the ruck on the clean out that gave him the chance to take to run at a second defender, a B defender on either side, you know. And I thought generally his play was very good. Some of his kicking was a little bit off at times. I'm still not quite sure about what the kicking strategy for the Lions is at times. It seems to go between, they'll box kick after third phase or fourth phase or something like that. And the chasing wasn't great today. They didn't win a lot of aerial duels, but generally, I really thought Mitchell's play was good. And you're right, that first 15, 20 minutes of the second half sort of won it for the Lions and allowed him to flourish.
Yeah, I'm going to pick up on the box kicking as well because I think you're right. Some of his kicks were just too short, and I don't think he was under huge pressure today either. I think his kicking's come on in recent years. I think it's got better and better and more consistent. But today was definitely a step backwards, in my opinion, in that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so yeah. I mean, we don't know what the strategy is in terms of the box kicking, what parts of the field or which phase or the scenarios. But I think generally they'll probably be disappointed with their aerial game. There wasn't enough catches being taken. A couple of good ones in the first half. Maybe Kinghorn, I think Keenan got a couple, but I think mostly they didn't really recover many and often conceded a penalty from it.
Yeah, and Keenan's very good at that typically. Like he wins more than he loses. And I thought today actually probably lost more than he won,
Yeah,
actually.
yeah,
In terms of box kicking, though, it's primarily for me. So the whole kickoff receipt thing, they couldn't win one short in the first game. They couldn't win one long, or they messed up a few long ones. Today they were catching them all, but they got very few clean exits. And one
yeah,
of the reasons was a messy breakdown. A couple of, balls got kicked out of breakdowns. And the other one was the short box kicking, which
yeah,
caused issues as well. So
yeah.
they're plugging holes, but then finding other ones. That I think they really need to get that kickoff receipt completely nailed down because it just invites pressure on themselves otherwise.
Yeah, yeah, and as is rightly said, it's basically a fourth set piece now, so it has to be the one that you're focused on a lot more. But and then Keenan at fullback, what did you think of him today? He didn't have a
I,
great game, did he?
No, he was for me. I really rate him. I think he's a fantastic player, but I don't think he was anywhere near his best today. He looked honestly. Obviously, we know he's been ill, so and it kind of looked like that. It kind of looked like he wasn't full of confidence and energy. Like he missed the final tackle when the guy went down the left hand touch line, which normally he makes those. He's a really solid tackler, and he just sort of let him slip through. There was a couple of handling errors, as we've already mentioned. The aerial game. He needed to play, but I'm sure next game he'll be better than he was today.
Okay, and here's the question for you: the Waratahs try. I thought it was an illegal clear out. I thought that should have been a penalty again for the clear out on Mac Hansen
For what reason?
because it targeted his head. But I
See,
understand why.
I disagree. I think there was head contact. Clearly, that's undeniable. But I think Hansen kind of moved at the last minute and got much lower because I think his feet went away from him a bit, didn't they? So yeah, he was going in aggressively and he was going in strongly. But I think the head contact, in my opinion, was essentially kind of accidental. And I think because of the changing dynamics of it, I think the guy was going one shoulder and then had to use the other at the last moment. So it looked kind of clumsy. For me, I agreed with the referee. When I saw it happen, I was like, oh, that's a bit, but I don't think he's really gone in there to hurt somebody.
Yeah, and I think, first of all, I was like, they're going to call that back, definitely. And I was pleased they did because I thought, oh, good, I spotted that. Well done, me. And then when they didn't give it, I was like, I suppose I could if you get them for you, you agree. If you get them against you, you disagree. It's one of those half and half things. But I thought that the bloke knew what he was doing there, and also I think if Hansen had stayed down and looked injured,
We don't want that. We don't want
no,
that.
no. But I'm saying that's what I mean. He basically just got whacked and got straight up and carried on running, and so I think it obviously didn't hurt him too much, if you know what I mean. So, but I think if he'd been seriously hurt, like as you said, he dipped and all that sort of thing, the mitigation would have been there. But I think if the outcome had been a guy sprawled on his back unconscious, I think there could have been a different outcome than a bloke who got wiped out, got back up and carried on chasing.
Yeah, I do agree, and Sam Warburton agrees with you as well. He said he thought it was an illegal clear out and
Yeah.
shouldn't have stood. So there's lots of decisions like this that can go either way in a game, and it's full of opinions, which is a great thing. So that's
All right.
that's all.
Let's talk about the other one then. The line out, this blocking line out call of the player behind. I mean, they said it on the commentary, and I agree with it. The fourth official must have had his book open on that page, because like every line out, I mean, if you lift and you bring them down, how do you not get in the way? I mean, that's sort of what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, I mean, I thought they were marginal. I could understand why they gave them. I could also understand if a referee looked at that and thought there was just enough access. I thought it was very close. I didn't mind the decisions, to be honest. They were consistent. There was one each, essentially,
Yes.
both of which ruled out a
Yeah.
try. So you can't argue with it in that regard.
Mm.
I thought it was very close. Yeah, I would have been happy either way with that decision, to be honest, with the ones today.
Yeah, I just think it's one of those laws that's it's almost impractical, because every line out has an element of that. Because in the lift, your job is to bring them down, but you don't bring them down with him holding the ball there. His natural movement is to show it there, and and to bring him down safely, you have to keep a hold of his hips or his legs, and to do that and to allow him to provide the ball or to show the ball to his teammates, you have to naturally move your body either side of him. So I think it's one of those. If I was the coaching staff, I would make sure you've spoken with the referees for the test series and with the Australian coaches and said, this is not going to be a thing, or this is going to be a thing, because you have to re-coach how you lift and do your lineouts. Or can we all just have a game where we know that it cannot be a obvious blocking move, but in the natural bringing down of someone into from a line out, your body shape is obviously going to be there, because you have to go that, and then they come down.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing in this scenario as well, which made it look probably potentially worse than it was, is they were deliberately trying to drive the maul around that back lifter. Like they were trying to get into open field with the maul. So as soon as it rotates that way, it's going to look, even if it's not actually, it's going to look worse than it potentially was. That was the case with both of them.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway, it'd be interesting to see what happens. It's one of those rules that everyone's like, okay, well, that's the new rule for that then. So we're going to just penalise that every time, are we? So.
Talking of laws, I was really impressed with Scott Cummings and his law appreciation of when a free kick is initiated, because one of the Waratahs players had a free kick about 10 metres out, I think, in front of the post. And if you've got the ball and the free kick's been given, as soon as you take a step forward, that is when the free kick's initiated. And Scott Cummings knew this, charged forward, and the guy rushed the kick. The kick went out sideways, basically, and the Lions scored off the subsequent line out. It was brilliant law appreciation.
Yeah, it's an excellent the old and remember when we used to play and someone would give a free kick, like, as soon as he moves, everyone shouts, as soon as he moves, he's moving, run. So if you have the ball, it's a scrum half. So once the guy is given the free kick, if you're the scrum half and you get the ball and you move to give the ball to someone else to take it, when does it move? When does it move and when does it not move?
Right. Well, it's very much down to interpretation. Like it typically is obvious. It's obvious, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like if somebody's like wandering around like with the ball, then they're not looking to actually do it. Yeah. But the guy was stood there, like looked. You could see him kind of look where he was going to kick the ball, took a step forward, And then it was pretty obvious to me, I think.
Yeah,
There's no
yeah,
grey area
exactly.
really in this one.
Yeah, good law knowledge, Mr. Cummings. So do you think he's got himself into the contention now?
Yeah, I don't think. I mean, there's a lot of strong performances. I think now throughout this tour in the second row. So I think he's still got work to do. But before this game, I would have said he was out of it. Now I think he's
Mm,
got a chance. Yeah,
yeah. I thought Furlong as well played well, but much better today. I thought he had a stronger game. He looked a bit fitter. It looked, he was. I was again. The scrum did pretty well right through. They brought obviously some talent off the bench, but both him, Beelum, Genge, I thought they were all pretty strong today, and again, good performances. So good to see that. But yeah, it's hotting up, isn't it now? Oof.
yeah, I agree. I thought Furlong had a energy about him today that said, "I want to make every single second I'm on this pitch count." And I
Yeah,
think I think he needed that. I think he really needed to show that. So I think it's great for him. I think it's great for the tour overall because that tight end shirt is still absolutely up for grabs for me. But Furlong is absolutely back in contention as far as I'm concerned.
yeah. And Cowan Dickey did all right again. I thought he was pretty good. Um, Kinghorn was okay. I thought. Didn't really have huge amounts to kind of impress with. Obviously, probably standout performers, as you said, Mitchell, but also, you got to say Jones's first half was excellent. Um, and it's great to see players. He's obviously he's had a good few years with Scotland now, but playing up in the Lions, you get to appreciate some of the skill sets and some of the physicality of him that you perhaps don't appreciate so much when he's playing for Scotland. And he seems really in his element there.
Yeah, I thought he played really well. He would have been my man of the match, actually. But also, I thought James Ryan did really well in the first half as well. Some of his
Yeah,
tackling was
yeah.
absolutely superb. And again, somebody who's been injured, so only got his first bench spot. This was his first start, and I thought he did. Thought he did really well.
Yeah, and then Josh van der Fleer, made the most 17 tackles or something. Outstanding performance. Do we think he's doing enough with the ball?
Yeah, I think he is. Yeah, I thought he had some good carries today. He is. I'd say he is more of a defensive open side. That's more where his strengths lie. But he does carry the ball well. Yeah, I think he does. Not as much as probably some of the others, but
Yeah,
So this is when it comes down to selecting balance in the back row. If you want to go with Van der Fleer as an open side, then you need some more ball carrying in the other positions. But he can absolutely do it. It's just part of the bigger game plan. Does he find himself in those situations as often as some of the others? Yeah, maybe not. But
maybe not. No.
balance.
And then Ben Earl, obviously, he had a number of standout moments. I thought his physicality in the final 20, I thought was really impressive. He was motoring still in that final 20, and that was probably one of the better game. One of his most impressive performances for a long time. I mean, obviously, I still get annoyed that he screams all the time. He's always clapping himself, and well played, Ben Earl, sort of thing. That just drives me mad. Like they get win a scrum penalty. It's like he celebrates it like it's the World Cup. But putting that to one side, I think you've got to be impressed with his energy, his fitness, his dynamism today. Really, really, really impressive.
I completely agree. I thought he was a workhorse. Even in the first half, when he wasn't finding as much space, he was still carrying. He was still offering himself constantly. And I don't know. I don't think there's anybody else in world rugby that makes that break like he does. It's like a body swerve, and then he gets back inside and then pumps the legs and goes away. Nobody else runs quite like he does. I don't think.
No, and I think also you need someone who's got that ability and agility off a slow ball just to be able to move it to a shoulder rather than just run straight head first. And I think the risk with the maybe it's a role for him coming off the bench as a finisher when legs are tired and stuff, but that ability buys them that half a millisecond to get over the top of the ball at speed and rather than kind of the whole thing sort of stuttering to a stop at the gain line. So no, I thought he'll be really pleased with his efforts tonight.
I agree. I thought he'd been quiet on tour so far, and I think again, similar to Furlong, that's put him back in contention now for a genuine test spot. Maybe just on the bench, but I think he's back in contention. Well, we're
Yeah.
talking about bench spots. How do we feel about how Marcus Smith played? Because I think that's where he's been earmarked to go and really sort of contribute from. What did you think of his performance today?
Well, they made the point in the commentary about the sort of the does he feel like he has to be double top? You know, he has to be perfect when he comes on. And I think my sense is he feels like he has to be perfectly Marcus Smith. So he's like, I've got to do certain things that people expect of me, which I understand, you know, go out and play your natural game. But my worry is that he's not going to have the authority. I don't know if the authority is the right word. Can he understand what is needed right now? What do we need right now? Not what could I do now, but what are we going to need right now? What does my front five need right now? What does my what do the inside backs need right now from me? And that's where I'm a little bit more concerned about, yes, his versatility and his skill and all that sort of thing. But in the white hot heat of a test, and he's got the last 10 minutes, that's where you kind of worry. I have a slight worry that he won't do what you absolutely need him to do then, which is where someone like Farrell, Owen Farrell, will come on and go, I will do what we absolutely need to do now. I might not have the magic in my boots or something. But you go, you know, maybe he's the game breaker you'll need in the last 10 minutes. And the last thing you want to do with Marcus Smith is ask him to be something he's not. But there we go.
Yeah, that's brilliant. You summed that up perfectly, I think. And agree. I think if we're chasing a game, I think he's the person that you want. Maybe if you're consolidating a lead, potentially not quite as much.
Yeah.
I agree with what you've said. However, I think he has made strides forward in those regards, in what you've just spoken about there in recent years. I think he's better now than he ever has been. But I do still agree with your worries. I think it's still a potential issue.
Yeah, because, for example, 10 minutes to go, you're 6 points down. You're chasing the game, but really what you're doing is how can we create pressure in the 22 to create a penalty, to create something? You know, is that going to require us to play a certain way in the middle of the field that is about kicking smartly, chasing smartly, creating pressure on that Australian back three versus we're gonna try on this. This is sixth phase. We're not getting anywhere. Now I'm going to try something on. It hasn't gone well. Sorry, lads. We're now back. You know, it's a penalty. They kicked it back to our line, and we're going to be 9 points down, or we're going to be back on our own line. So I think that's the key thing about him is, yes, you're chasing a game, but chasing a game doesn't necessarily mean throw it around. Chasing a game means how do we exert pressure to be able to convert to points. So I think that's going to be really interesting for them to think about that as a strategy. And seeing Farrell on the there today, and it was funny, they were booing him and stuff. It's quite funny. It made me think again about what his role is in that squad. And I saw O'Gara did an interview a little bit about it. Again, sort of, I suppose, acknowledging his mindset, his ability, his experience is going to be invaluable. Also saying they won't want him just to kind of be a bit part player. They'll want him to exert some kind of influence on a test match, whether it be as a bench player, whether it be around the squad or whatever. But he's there to, why would they not bring Freddie Stewart, or why would they not bring, any of those other players? Why him? And I think, that ability to know what's going to be needed in that top 6 inches of a test match, I think he could be very invaluable.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that I agree. I think that's the prime reason why he's there, because of that experience, because of that being there and done it, and because of just the levels that he holds himself to. Okay, mate, we've spoken a lot about attack. So we just have a couple of words about defence as well, because
absolutely.
I think what we saw today is we saw conditions that were probably conducive to defence in terms of the ball being a little bit greasy. Alex Mitchell mentioned that afterwards. So, handling wasn't going to be quick and slick and all that kind of stuff. However, I thought the Lions at times showed great line speed and great persistence in that line speed as well. Sometimes you see teams fly up and then stop, but you've got to recognise that sometimes you need to fly up and keep going and keep going. And I thought we saw that from the Lions several times today.
Yeah, and especially in the first half, and Warburton referenced it as well. There was a couple of sets where they really exerted that kind of physical pressure on the on the Waratahs. Not and it wasn't necessarily it flying up. It was just we're going to hit this guy, then we're going to hit that guy, then we're going to hit that guy, and every hit was banged down, and it just and against a team that want to play, it 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 just sat their confidence very quickly, and within 4 or 5 hits, they'd petered out. And I think that's the sort of thing which Farrell will be really happy with, and Easter will be really happy with is their first up tackling. A couple of errors here and there in the game, but generally there were sets of defence that created more and more pressure on a team that wanted to play. And I think that's what he'll want to see in the test matches is the Wallabies will want to play. Can we make our first up hits? Can we make our one-on-one hits in a way that ekes out all their confidence, and suddenly we're going nowhere? So yeah, I thought first half especially some really good defensive patterns and defensive numbers.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we'll bring this to a close, mate. Any other sort of final thoughts? Any other players you want to mention, or anything else at all?
I think that they talked a little bit about some of the backs moves where they're bringing 2 or 3 different runners in behind, and how that's being executed quite well. I think I really do. I'm impressed with the appetite, etc. The risk is, and I saw it a little bit with Van der Merwe again at the end. He gets it, and then he just runs really hard at the touchline, and then it's out, and then they can't recover it, etc. And I think that's one of the things where it will be interesting to see what is the, for want of a better word, the orangi or switch move here that is just going to line things up a little bit more, because I think the Aussie defenses will love just to keep going boom, 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 and then 3 of them just pile a guy into touch. So I think, rather than kind of going out there and then having to try and step back in, and you saw it a couple of times, well, now we'll step back in. What's the thing that runs at a weaker shoulder off a first phase coming back on the angle? And I think that would be something to see, because they're doing it quite well off perhaps the tip pass off a forward, just on that angle. But where is it coming from? Perhaps a backs move off first phase that just fixes, doesn't allow them to drift so much. That would be my one thing I'm looking forward to seeing, perhaps a bit of that in the next game.
Now, you mentioned in the midweek a bit potential bait and switch, and I wonder if that's the same. I wonder if we're seeing the same now, where they're getting all the way to the touchlines every time, and they're just sort of like putting that picture in front of the Wallabies to look at during these games, and they'll get used to seeing that, and they'll just think that's what they're going to do, and then we'll see this when it comes to the test match.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's very interesting to see.
Wonderful stuff. Okay, mate, we'll bring this to a close. People at home, what do you think? Let us know in the comments down below. Any players that you think played well that maybe we didn't think played well? Anything you disagree with? Let us know down in the comments. We'll have a good conversation about it there. I mentioned in my video earlier, I learned something from the comments section every single video. So let's have it, and we'll have a good old chinwag about it there. Give this video a thumbs up while you're down there, if you don't mind. It helps other people find it. And it just leaves me to say, Taff, thank you so much again today. Wonderful stuff.
Great stuff, and looking forward to the next one.
100%. And people at home, you can subscribe there. You can watch that one next. Don't forget to get out and play.